So I'll start just a little bit of presentation and I'll start, okay? So good day, everyone. Good day, good morning, good evening, wherever you're in the world. Welcome to another Power BI section brought to you by UrBizEdge. So for today's session, we're having connecting to data sources in Microsoft Power BI. And our special guest is Prince Chukwuemeka, who will be taking us on this journey. So as you all know, this session was brought to you by the collaboration between UrBizEdge and Enterprise DNA. And for some of you that might not know, Enterprise DNA, the main focus is basically empowering Power BI users to change their world. They're also a data company in the United States, and they specialize in training, offering courses in Power BI and other data-related tools. And also UrBizEdge, also we in Lagos, Nigeria. So for UrBizEdge, we have branches in Lagos, we have branches in Abuja, we also have branches in Port Harcourt. So about us, we're a registered Microsoft Excel consultant, financial modeling, business intelligence, data analysis, and enterprise solution firm in Nigeria. We also specialize in helping companies and high-value professionals be on top of the business data. Also, the developer of some Nigerian financial tools, which you can find on Microsoft Office, such as the Nigerian Finance Market Analysis tool, and also the Nigerian Stock Analysis Dashboard, and so many other more. And as you all know, we're also a training company in Lagos, Nigeria. So this is our calendar for some of our upcoming training. So on the 24th, on the 23rd of February, we're having Business Intelligence and Dashboard using Microsoft Power BI. On the 2nd of March, we're having Business Intelligence also and Dashboard using Microsoft Power BI. On the 3rd of March, also, we're having in-depth Excel training, executive dashboard, and business data analysis. And for our special guest, Prince Chukwuemeka, so I'll give you a brief about himself. He's very versatile. So Prince is a Microsoft certified data analyst, also a Microsoft certified solution BI reporting, also a Microsoft certified trainer, that's MCT. He has developed cutting-edge solution and trained various corporate clients on business intelligence and other analysis too. A result-oriented individual with a penchant for positive challenge, possesses strong ability to read and analyze data using Microsoft Excel and Power BI, a swift learner and easily adapt to new work environments and culture. So no further ado, I'll stop sharing my screen and go back and give our other session to Prince. So Prince, over to you. So stop sharing my screen.
Hello everyone, and thank you so much for having me here. I'm so honored to be here, and we'll be talking on. And thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. I really appreciate. So, as our hosts have already hinted us, and as we also have seen in our flyers, we are going to be talking on connecting to different data sources. So I'm going to be sharing my screen now. So please confirm if you can see my screen.
Yes, I can see your
screen.
Can
you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, thank you so much. We're talking about connecting to different data sources using Power BI. So as we all know, Power BI is a complete solution for business intelligence. So for BI intelligence, so that is the BI in the power. So it powers business intelligence. So not only that, it helps you to build graph and charts to be able to get your business insight. Power BI also have the ability to connect to thousands of sources. Now, the truth about connecting to different sources is not actually how to connect to it, right? It's not how to connect to an Excel file. It's not how to connect to a Microsoft database file and maybe JSON file and the rest of it. It's not all about that. The major thing is to know which of this connection is suited for my business. All right, so that is the most important thing. So basically what we're going to be talking about is maybe those connections that you have heard about, you know how to connect already. But we're going to look at it in depth to know how best it fits to our business. Look at the nitty-gritty of how we can successfully connect to this data source to help us get the most out of our business. Because the use of Power BI is just to generate business insight and also help us both enterprise and individual. All right, so we're going to be looking at different data sources. So you already know about me. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer. I'm also a Microsoft Power BI certified analyst. So you can connect to me on LinkedIn, Prince Chukwuemeka, and you can also connect to me on my Twitter handle. I also talk about some awesome topics when it comes to Power BI and Excel. I also have a YouTube channel that I run to talk about some tricks that you might want to get in touch with when it comes to Power BI and Excel and SQL. So currently I'm a BI analyst, lead BI analyst at Analyse Pay, formerly known as Shago Payment. So, yeah, so that's about me. So what we're going to be talking about, we are going to talk about how to connect to these different data sources. We also are going to know how we can also change data sources, right? You want to know how we can change data sources. We're going to be connecting to flat files. We're going to be connecting to rational databases, and we're going to also connect to NoSQL or semi-structured data files. We're going to also see how we can connect to websites and the rest of it. All right, so let's go to it. So the first one is, I already talked about it, Power BI, help you connect to thousands of places with the help of Power Query. So you find Power Query online. We have three aspects of Power Query, let me mention. So we have Power Query online, we have Power Query in Power BI, we also have Power Query in Excel. So these are the three aspects of Power Query. And the major thing that Power Query helps us do is it helps us to connect to our data source, clean it, and take it into Power BI for business generating insight. So Power BI can connect to your Power Apps, can help you connect to different sources that you would, plenty different sources that you don't know about. All right, so let me just go ahead and open my Power BI. So this is my Power BI, and the UI UX of Power BI is quite easy to use. So for you to go get any data, you want to go to get data. All right, so let's talk about the first thing. So the first thing we need to talk about is how can we connect to flat files. So we have flat files like text or CSV, we have folders, we have Excel workbook, and we have so many other flat files that we can connect to using Microsoft Power BI. But like I said, the main thing is not how to connect to these files. We're going to look at why should we connect to these files and why is it necessary for us to connect to these files. Now we'll start talking about how we can connect to Excel and CSV files. So for Excel and CSV files, one thing you should note is that anytime you connect to an Excel or CSV file, you know that you're not going to be able to refresh in Power BI. So what happened in Power BI is that Power BI is connected to this file. It's not going to take that file. It's not going to take a duplicate of that file into Power BI. It's going to generate a duplicate of that file into Power BI. So that means that it does not have direct connection source per se, right? Per se doesn't have direct connection to Power BI, to the data source. That is why if you connect to an Excel file or a CSV file and you open the file, try to put in other things, and you try to refresh in Power BI, it's not going to be able to refresh except you go to Power BI service and you start connecting. Doing all this whole refresh schedule using Power BI Gateway to be able to schedule your refresh. That is when it can point to that Excel file and connect. I will show you this. So I have this Excel file here. I have this Excel file here called states. So I'm going to connect to this Excel file called states. So I'm going to say connect to an Excel file, and I'm going to browse to the place I saved the file, and I'll connect to it. Now, basically what we know is that we should definitely say transform, but we're not going to do transform. So we're going to just go ahead and say load. All right. So we're going to click on the file and we say, okay, let me just do transform because I need to use first role as header. So click on transform data. Okay, so I'm going to use first role as header. Then I'm going to go to close and apply and go to Power BI. Now I'm going to also go to that file and I'm going to open it. So let's open it in Excel and try to add in some other things inside of it. So let's go. So we have tax seated and capital in Nigeria, and right here I want to add, let's say KB, or let me just add my name, Prince. And I'm also going to add James, and I'm going to add, let's say online. Okay, so I've added these three things. So I'm going to go to Power BI, look at my file here. I have the state and capital. Okay, look at it there. It stopped at Zamfara. So we're going to go and we refresh. We click on refresh. So let's see how this works. So if we go back, so the data we added will not be able to add up into Power BI. So that is just the essence, right? So if you connect to an Excel file, so you want to bear this in mind that if I'm connecting to an Excel file, if I'm connecting to a CSV file, is not going to refresh in Power BI desktop. Now listen, in Power BI desktop, not in Power BI service, in Power BI desktop. In Power BI desktop, it's not going to refresh in Power BI desktop, except you go to service, add all those connection and try to be able to point to the data source to refresh. That's only when it refreshes. So the only time you would want to connect to an Excel file or a CSV file is when you know that I'm not going to add anything to this data, and I'm not going to add any, there's no modification, there's nothing adding to this data. This data is just going to be static without me adding anything. So that's when you want to connect to a CSV or a text file. But there's something else, right? There's something else that we need to also consider, right? So if you connect to this thing, you know that it's not going to refresh, but we can also help it refresh by connecting it on, putting it in our OneDrive, and we are able to connect to it, all right? So if you put this file into your OneDrive and you want to connect to it, you are going to be able to refresh in Power BI. So let's try connecting to a OneDrive. I've showed you how to connect to an Excel file and a CSV file just the same way. Just go to get data, you point CSV, then you browse to where your data is on your local system, and you're able to connect to a CSV file or an Excel file. Now let's look at how we can connect to a OneDrive file, right? So if you know that my data is I'm going to use this data, this is the business data that is going to be refreshing, that will always need it to refresh, I will always add something inside of it, I would want to connect to a OneDrive. I want to put it in a OneDrive, I want to take it to Google Sheets. So we're going to look at how this two works, right? I'm going to take it to a Google Sheet, I'm going to take it to a OneDrive, so that I'll be able to refresh in Power BI desktop. All right. So the reason why we are putting it in that place is that you want to give it this online cloud connection. You want to give it this cloud or online connection. So anytime you're connecting to an online or a cloud solution, just know that it's going to be able to refresh in Power BI desktop. All right. So let's try connecting to a OneDrive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this file, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to cut it. Then I put it in my OneDrive here. I think I'll delete this. So I'll put it here, and I'm going to paste it here on my OneDrive. Okay, it's still in use. Let me close it down here. I don't want to save. Then I retry. All right, so it's saved here. So it's now in my OneDrive. Now to connect to OneDrive, what you need to do is go to the file where you saved it in your OneDrive. Right, click on the file, and you'll be able to see OneDrive, and you say you want to view it online. You want to view this file online. So if you click to view it online, it should direct you to an online source where you can be able to view this on your Microsoft OneDrive. Okay, so here is my OneDrive, and it's still loading. I'm still loading. Let's go. Okay, so look at it here. Let me see. Okay, let me see if it's here. Let me try again. Let me see whether it's this file. I saved it with states. Let me see. Okay, so let's do it again. Right click, go to OneDrive, and you want to view. Click on view online. So it's opening. Let me see why this is not here. Okay, let me see this file. Okay, let me see where this is. It should be on my file. Okay, let me just open this too and see. So let me just see how this works. I don't know why this is not showing here, but it should be able to show here. It's in my OneDrive. Let's see one more time. Okay, let me just take it here and put it in my document. Click here, paste it in my document, and try opening it from here again. Let's see. So go to OneDrive. You also go view it online. Okay, so let's go to my file, then document. Why is this not showing here? Okay, let me just take one file here and show you how to connect to a OneDrive. Let me take one file here and show you how to connect to a OneDrive file. I don't know why it's not showing. Okay, so let's take this. Okay, so let's take this file. So what you need to do to connect to OneDrive is Microsoft have a OneDrive connector, but we're not going to use the connector to connect to a OneDrive. So what we're going to do is on our file, we'll just go to File, and you would see Export. Wait, excuse me, let me see. Okay, so you go to File and you go to Export. We should be able to see another feature here. Let me see. So I click here. Something is not right here. I'm looking for that. I think that will give us much better way to view this than what we currently have.
I'm sorry, why don't you just upload directly from here? There's an upload button in that folder, that document part.
Yeah,
How about that?
I think let me just try this one more time. Share should be able to give us that connection. I don't know why this is saying this way. Okay, so what we'll do, let me connect to a Google Sheet first, then we'll come back to it. So let me just connect to a Google Sheet. Okay, so to the same process to connect to a Google Sheet is the same way to connect to a OneDrive file. So let me just go to one of my file in my Google Sheet and connect to it. The same process of connecting to a OneDrive file. So I have this sheet here in my Google Sheet. Okay. Okay, so I have this data here. It's open in place. Okay, so connecting to Google Sheet is the same way of connecting to a OneDrive file. So what you need to do is you also want to go to file, it's still loading. So you have an editor. So I use my notes editor to be able to connect to it. So this is my note editor. So this file is still loading. So I get my note editor. So what I do is I click on file, then you go to share. So when you want to share with others, you just copy the link. So you copy the link, then you go to your notepad. So if you paste this code to your Power BI, it's not going to be able to connect. Let's try it. So go to get data, you click on web, and you paste this code. And if you click OK, it's not going to be able to connect to that file. It's going to connect to the HTML that the website or the Google Sheet was built with. So you're not going to be able to connect to it. Let's say it's loading. It's connecting. I don't know why this is taking long. It should not be able to take this long. Okay, it's connecting. So look at it here. I'm not going to be able to connect to the file. So this is not what I want to connect to. So that's why I have my note here. So if you connect to this, what you need to do is try to edit it. So from here, edit, you just want to delete from here. Edit question mark USP equals to sharing. So you want to delete it, right? You want to delete that part and you say you want to export it and you want to export it as an Excel file, right? You want to export it as an Excel file. So this is the extension for Excel file. So with this export equals to question mark equals to, this is the extension for Excel file. So you can now copy this. You can now copy this link, go back to Power BI, go to get data. You want to say web, and you paste this URL. So if you paste this URL and click OK, you are going to be able to connect to those tables. Now, one good thing about those connecting to this table is that, like I mentioned, you are going to be able to refresh your data. You're going to be able to add something in the data and it will reflect in Power BI, not like connecting to a traditional CSV or an Excel file. So with this now, let's see. Connecting. Why is this happening? Let me see. See our code again. Let me see my code again. Yeah, this is export equals to CSV. Let's see. Come on, guys. Let me see. Let me copy this link again and see why that happened. Copy this again. Let's see. Okay, this is supposed to be a spot. Then the extension for Excel file is this. Back, let's go. Let me see if it's my mistake. And let's see. So if you're connecting for the first time, it will ask you if you want to connect as anonymous or the rest. So you just want to specify how you are connecting, either anonymous or you want to connect through Windows, specify your Windows login details. Something is absolutely not cool. Let me see. Okay, let me see another file. I don't have access to this file.
Okay, Prince.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I don't know, but I know that Power BI made available Google Sheet connector. Why don't you try that method? For the
Yeah.
and also for okay.
Let me see this. Please let me just see this. I think I'm getting something wrong. Okay, I think I don't have access to that file I was trying to. So this is it. This should be able to connect. I think I don't have access to that file I was trying to connect. So go to get data. Let's see this. I think I don't have access to that file. My network is seriously slow. This network is seriously slow. This is taking time. Why is this taking time?
Oh, sorry. I think it's network. It will come up.
Yeah, I think it's network too. So the file I was trying to connect before, I don't have I was restricted on that file, so that was the reason why it could not connect. So before you want to connect to a Google file, make sure you have adequate permission, because if you don't have adequate permission and you're trying to sign into the file, you will not be able to sign into those files because of the permission settings. So you want to make sure that you have permission to the file you are able to share with. I don't know why this is taking time. Why is this? Oh, this is taking too much time. Let me see why this is taking time. My network is fine. Why is this taking too much time? Okay, let's try this to OneDrive. So for OneDrive, okay, let's say this. So what you need to do is click on embed. So for OneDrive files, so go to the file you want to connect to, right click, you will see embed. So you copy the embedded link too. So you need to do some editing too, just like we did for Google Sheet. So connecting to those, so we generate the HTML code. So you just want to copy this link. Also go to your text editor. So I use this for my text editor. Let me see whether this is connecting. I don't know why this is taking time, or I should not be able to take this time. So with this, the same way you edited Google Sheet. So from here, you want to edit this out. This should be out. Then for the embedded, you want to change it to download. It is a lot in my place of work. Google Sheet file and Google Files. So with this, you want to delete this aspect, this too, from here. Okay, from here, you want to take this out. And also you want to say, you want to export it the same way we exported this as an Excel file. You also want to say, you want to export it as an Excel file for it to be able to connect. So that's, I think I have some videos this way where I talked about how to connect to Excel and CSV files, Google Sheet files. So I was also talking about how you can connect to a website. So the same way you can connect to a website is the same way you connect to all those files. So just know that when you are connecting to a CSV file, please, can anyone hear me? Please confirm if anyone can hear me.
Loud and clear, sir.
Okay, so just like I wrote here, so just know that when you're connecting to a local file, you are not going to be able to refresh, right? You're going to be able to refresh your data. So what Power BI does, like I mentioned, is that it creates a copy of that data and save it into your Power BI without having kind of direct connection to the file. So fortunately, anything you do on the file is not going to reflect. So if it's an Excel file and a CSV file, anything you do on that file is not going to be reflected. So it's better if the data is what you're going to be using to be working, right? If it's something that is going to be what you're going to be updating frequently and you don't want to use Power BI service, you can want to put it in your OneDrive or you put it in a Google Sheet, right? So those two methods will help you. Just like I said, there's a note, a cloud-based option such as OneDrive or Google Sheet is the most effective ways to keep your file and your data set report your data set report and dashboard in Power BI to start. However, if your data does not change regularly, saving on a local computer is a suitable option. So if you know your data source is not going to be changing from time to time, you're going to be adding anything on your file from time to time, just make sure you just save it as an Excel file. But if you know that I'm going to be updating it regularly without using Power BI service, you want to check the option for OneDrive or you want to check the option for Google Sheet. Right, so there's the two options. So another thing also we need to talk about is that if you are connecting to an Excel file or you're connecting to any data source, one of the major issues that Power BI have is data source changing, right? So if your data source changes, it's going to somehow impact your data. So what I mean is that if I move this data, we connected to this data here. If I move this data from where it is, I moved it from where it is, right? And I come to Power BI and I click on refresh. I'm going to have an error. It's going to tell me that I have error on this file. This file have an error. Let's go to Power Query. Let me show you guys. So if we go to Power Query and I try to refresh, it's going to tell me that I have an error in that data because I moved it from where it is. So it's showing me an error sign. So I moved it from where it is to another different location. Even though it's in my system, it's still showing that error. So the reason why it's showing that error is because Power BI is source conscious. It's source conscious, both cloud or on premises, anywhere it's coming from, is source conscious. So what happened now is that it's going to show me an error that my file is not on the place I saved it, even though it's in my system. I just moved the location. So one of the ways to solve data source issue in Power BI is to create a parameter. So if you know that I'm working with a development data set that is going to be regularly changing from time to time. So what I need to do is I would want to create a parameter for all my locations where my data is going to be moving, right? So what I need to do on how to create parameter in Power BI is you go to manage parameter in your Power Query and you click on new parameter. You want to name your parameter. So for here, I want to name it, let's call it data source. Let's call this data source. So the next thing I want to do is this type, I want to change it to text. And suggested value, just leave it at any value. Then the current value, what you need to do is go to the new location that your file is. I moved it to document. Okay, so what you need to do, I'm using Windows 11, so I want to right click. I will say copy as file. So if you're not using Windows 11, you would want to, what you want to do is click on Shift Control, click Shift Control Shift, right click. Okay, sorry, I think it's Shift right click. You'll be able to see this copy as file. So if you're not using Windows 10, Windows 11, you want to do Shift right click to be able to copy as file, to be able to see copy as file. But I'm using Windows 11, just right click on the file, you will see copy as file. So if you copy it as file, I'll also go to my editor. So what I do in my editor is I paste the copied code, then I remove the quotation at the beginning and at the end of my file path. Then if I copy it out, go back to Power Query editor, then paste it on this current value, click OK, and it's not yet there. So what I need to do is go back to my file, go to the data source, right click on the data source, I will see edit setting, and the file part, I will change it to parameter. So it will automatically reference this parameter I created here and I click OK. So my data should be back, right? So I go back to here. So this is my data. So if I moved it, let's say I'm going to move it from where it is stored in this document. So I'm going to cut it and I'm going to put it in the original place it used to be. Right click and I paste it here. If I also go to Power BI, Power Query, sorry, or Power BI, and try to refresh, it's also going to tell me an error. So I'm going to also create another parameter. So I know that this, my data source, is going to be moving from time to time. So I create a parameter to be able to help me keep it in check. So this, I'm going to call this SL. So I'm going to call this SL. The same thing, the type should be text. Then the text, I go back to where my file is saved, right click on the file. I'm using Windows 11, like I mentioned, I copy as path. If you're not using Windows 11, use Shift right click to be able to see copy as path. Then go to your note editor too, and you want to paste, remove the quotation at the beginning, and at the end of your file path, you copy. Then you go back to Power Query, paste it on the current value, click OK. Then on your data source, go back to the sheet. On your data source, right click and you say edit setting. Then you change it from the parameter you created, the first parameter, to the newest parameter, and you click OK. So now, if my data source is changing from where it is saved to the document in my OneDrive, I'm not going to be able to have data source issue. So anytime I have data source issue, I just go to my parameter and I'm able to switch from one parameter to the another. So this works perfectly for every data source you want to click, every data source, both SharePoint, OneDrive, Google Sheet, anyone. So if you change its location, just create a parameter and you'll be able to dynamically change from one data source to the another. All right, so the next thing we also need to talk about is how we can be able to connect to non-structural data. So we have more than two types of data. So we have structured and we have unstructured. We also have semi-structural. So we're going to talk about how can we connect to a semi-structured data set. So one of the semi-structured data set that we have is a JSON file or Cosmos DB when you're working with cloud. So if you have data source in your Cosmos DB, is going to come as a non-structured data. So what non-structured data means, or NoSQL means, is that these files are not going to be coming as row and columns. They're not going to be coming as row and columns, right? So they're going to be coming as unstructured. So structured data are data that appear in rows and columns. So if they're not coming as row and column, that means they are unstructured. So I have an example I want to show you guys here. Is a JSON file. So JSON files are unstructured data. It is JSON file, they're unstructured data. And as we know, Power Query only accepts structural data. So what happens if we get data that's not structured and we try to put it into Power Query? What happens? So look at what happens. Let's go. So you go to get more data. You get to get more, sorry. Then you choose your file. So the place I'm going to now is JSON files, and I click connect. So I browse to my local file where it is and I connect to a JSON file. Now it's not going to show me the option of load or transform. It's going to automatically take me to Power Query. And Power Query is very intelligent. So Power Query have done some transformation for me. So I'm going to cancel this transformation that Power Query have done and show you how it looks like. So if you connect to unstructured data, look at how it appears. So sometimes Power Query might not know what to do and it will leave it here. All right, sometimes it will transform your data and help you to transform your data. All right. So, but if it brings you here, what you need to do first is to convert the list. So it's a list. It's not a table. It's not a table. So anytime you hear table comes with the ideology of structured. So if it's going to come as a list, so you're going to convert it to a table. So you're going to say convert this list to a table. So it's converted to a table. Then the next thing you want to do is to expand. So the next thing you want to do is to expand your rows, and after that you want to expand the record. Now this is where you need to pay attention. So look at this here called use original column name as prefix. So using original column names as prefix, what happens is that Power Query is going to give you something like value.firstname, value.lastname, value.gender, value.age, and value.number. So we don't want that. So one of the rules in Power Query is that you keep your column names and your table name so simple. So the reason for this is because you're going to be writing DAX and you don't want it to be complicated to make you not know what you're doing when you're writing DAX. So you want to keep your column names and your table names as simple as possible in Power Query. So with this, I would just want to unclick this and I'm going to say load. So right now, I've loaded my columns. So these are my columns. I've expanded my columns, and the next thing I want to do is to change the data type. So how to make a unstructured data to be structured in Power Query? The steps is you first convert table to list. You also want to expand your record, then you change the data type. So I'm just giving this heads up for people that want to write maybe PR300. You might see it in the exam and say, how do you work with unstructured data? What are the 3 ways to make an unstructured data to be structured in Power Query? So the 3 ways is you convert table to list, you convert the list to table, sorry, then you expand the record, then you change the data type. So the next thing you want to do is to change the data type. All right, so this is for unstructured data. So when we talk about structured data, also let's see how we can also connect to a structured data. So example of structured data we're going to be connecting to is MySQL server, right? So from Power Query, I want to go to new source, then I choose SQL server. Now, connecting to an SQL server is so simple, but there's something we need to pay attention to. So the thing we need to pay attention to is the data connectivity mode. The data connectivity mode. So what the data connectivity mode means is how do you want to connect your data? How do you want to store your data that you are getting from a database into Power BI? How are you going to store it? So we have the import and we have the direct query. So typically, how to connect the two of them is the same way, right? So you copy your database name, you copy your database name, and you take it to Power Query. Then you paste your database name here, and also optionally you can put your your server name. Sorry, that's the first thing you need to put, your server name. Then optionally, you would want to put your database name. If you want to connect to a particular database, right? You put your database name. And sometimes you want to connect to a particular table, you write an SQL statement. Now, before I go to import and direct query, so you can also write an SQL statement here to be able to connect to a table or to be able to filter your data to a table on how you want it in your Power BI. Right, so you can write an SQL statement here. But one thing I want to tell you is this here, command timeout in minutes. So the default setting for timeout is 10 minutes, right? So if you're connecting writing query, so 10 minutes is the default setting for it to timeout. So the default setting for this timeout is 10 minutes. Okay, so just to mention. Now, let us go back to the original topic, which is connectivity mode. So we have the import and we have the direct query. Now, when we say the import, what we're trying to say is that you want to get a copy of your data into Power BI, just like we imported an Excel file or CSV file. So we want to get a copy of your data into Power BI. So the advantage here is that everything you have to do in Power BI, transforming data and the rest, will be able to transform. Let's try it out. So if you click here, I click OK, and I'm connecting to my database. So I'm going to just go and I'll be able to connect to, want to connect to any file here. Let me just connect to this and I click OK. So in Power Query here, so I connected to the import mode, like I mentioned. One important thing you must note in import mode is that it works like Excel file and CSV files when you export them or when you import them into Power BI, right? So you can do exactly anything you want to do here. If you want to transform your data, if you want to delete anything here, you can be able to do any transformation and you can write as many DAX as you can write using Power BI. When you connect through a database through the import mode, it works as you importing an Excel file or CSV file. Now, the only thing that you should have in mind is that your refresh is also going to be in Power BI service. Your refresh is also going to be in Power BI service, not Power BI desktop. When you connect to a database using the import mode, your refresh is going to be through the Power BI service, is going to be in Power BI service. Now, the other option we have here, which is the direct query. Now, direct query will give you this real life feeling, right? So I work in a fintech industry and sometimes we monitor fraud. So if I want to monitor fraud that is happening, especially during the Imba month, if I want to monitor an individual that I think I'm suspecting to be fraud, I put his data, I connect to a database and I put it as direct query. So it gives me this live kind of feeling of my data because I can refresh in Power BI desktop, even in seconds. You can refresh in seconds when you connect through the direct query. But the disadvantage here is that your data is not in Power BI, right? That data is not visible in Power BI. You can't see the data in Power BI. You can see the columns, but you cannot see the data in Power BI. So that means the data is not in Power BI. So when anything you are doing in Power BI, you're querying it to the database. You're querying to the database. So let's say in this employee, so if I connect to it, another thing as well is that if you connect to the direct query, you cannot do transform. You cannot transform your data. And there are some certain DAX you cannot write because the data is not visible in Power BI. Now, these are the disadvantage and advantage of connecting through the import mode and also wanting to connect through the direct query mode. So another advantage is that when you do import mode, right, it gives you the best performance for your dashboarding, for your reporting, it gives you the best performance. But your only disadvantage is that I'm not going to be able to refresh in Power BI desktop. And another thing is that if you're working with a very large data, right, you would also want to connect through the direct query. Because if you connect through the import mode with a large data and you're trying to refresh your data, it's going to take you a whole lot of time. It's going to take you a whole lot of time. And you would want to just avoid that. Is there nothing in this table? Let me connect to it again. Let me connect to another file. SQL Server, then in direct query, let me see this. Okay, I think let me just load this. Okay, let me connect to another file here. Fat Finance. Yeah. So let's connect to this too. Okay, yeah. So the Fat Finance 2 is my direct query. So there's nothing in this employee data. So what I'm telling you. So I connected to the Fat Finance 2 through direct query, and the Fair Finance is import mode. Now this is my Power BI. It's loading. Let's give it a few minutes. It's loading. Okay, this is connecting. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So remember Fat Finance, the first one is import mode, and this is direct query. So if I go here and I click on Fat Finance 2, it's going to tell me that this table uses direct query cannot be shown. So my data is not visible in Power BI. So that's what I've been saying. Your data is not going to be visible in Power BI. But this you imported through the import mode is going to be visible here. So with this direct query, you cannot transform your data. You cannot transfer your data because the data is not visible in Power BI, so you cannot transform it. But the import will enable you transform your data, okay, and write as many DAX as possible. But through the direct query, you cannot be able to write many DAX as possible. So you want to bear that in mind when connecting to your data source, when you're connecting to your data source. So I've mentioned some advantage. So let's go. I think I have something here. So the performance. So when you connect to the import mode, right? Data load into the memory and it's always faster to query from the memory. So it's always faster. So like I mentioned, it gives you the best performance. So when you connect to the import mode, it gives you the best performance compared to when you connect to the direct query. But one thing you want to know is that when you connect to the import mode, you have limited of 1 gigabyte per data set. So 1 gigabyte per data set. But when you connect to a direct query, since the data is not in Power BI, you don't have any space that is occupying. So that's why I said when you're working with a very large data, you want to resort to connecting to the direct query, right? So you'll be able to connect to a very large data and it will not give you any performance issue. Now, right? So, but when you import to the import mode, when you're connecting to the database, just know that your only space you have is 1 gigabyte. And also another advantage of connecting to the import mode is that you are able to transform your data. I mentioned this. You are going to be able to transform your data because the data is visible in Power BI memory compared to when you connect to the direct query. So you're not going to be able to transform your data and you are not going to be able to write some particular DAX. So you're not going to be able to write some particular DAX. There are some DAX you will not be able to write, like new table DAX, new column DAX, because your data table, those tables are not visible in Power BI. So you're not going to be able to write those kind of DAX when you connect through the import direct query mode. Now we also have another mode here. Let me mention too. So also have another mode here when you connect to a data source using a database, right? So we have the one we'll call, so you go to data modeling, we'll have the one we'll call the dual. So this dual, the concept about this dual is that some aspect of your data will be import and some aspect of your data will be direct, right? So whenever you change your data source from direct query to import, to dual, what happens is that some part of your data is going to be imported and some of your data is going to be in direct query. So you don't have any connection, you don't have any control over this. That's one thing about it. You don't have any control over which part of your data should be import and which part of your data should be direct query. You don't have any access to determine which part of it should be in the import and which part of it should be in the direct. So just to mention, we also have another storage mode in Power BI that we call the dual mode. Okay, so this is how you can connect to a database, and this is the advantage of connecting through these two options. Okay, so we also have another one I also want to talk about. Our time was fast spent. I'm so sorry, guys. My network fucked me up. So I've talked about NoSQL. Connecting to a JSON file, I've talked about it. So let's talk about how we can connect to a folder. So one of the things I would always make sure is that the data I want to connect to in a folder is the same thing. So what I mean by the same thing is this. They contain the same information, because whenever I want to connect to a folder, you have option to transform or combine and transform, right? Combine and transform, or you transform. So let me just show you guys. So go to get data, and you also want to go to more, then you see folder. So you go to folder, then click on folder. You can browse to where data is, but I don't really like browsing. So what I do is I go to my folder, right click, and let me right click here. I'm able to copy as part too. I copy it as part, then I go to Power BI. Go to my editor. You also want to remove the quotation at the end and at the beginning of your file path. Then you copy the path. You go to the folder and you paste it here. So I think it's quite easier for me. All right, so when you connect to a folder, look at the options here. You have option to combine and transform, or combine and load, or you have option to load. Now, let me show you what happened in combine and transform, which is the best option to do. So what happened in combine and transform is this. So like I mentioned, I say I always like, whenever I want to connect to a folder, that my data should be the same thing. So the data we are connecting to is data for Nigeria and other states to Australia. So what happened here, if I combine and transform, is this. So data for Nigeria would fill this to this point, and data for, let's say, Canada or another country that have in that folder would fill down here. Okay, so, and I wrote down here, I said, to combine and transform button is the easiest way to combine data file in the file on the folder you specify. You also need to use the load button. Okay, so if you use the transform button or load button or transform button only, it will require you to manually prepare your data. So it will be manual combination. So what you need to do also is, when you go back to Power BI, you now start merging your file. So instead of having to merge your file by clicking on the transform button, just is best you click on combine and transform. And also, whenever you want to get data from a folder, please make sure that they contain the same information. All the files they have in that folder contain the same information. If not, please try as much as possible to connect to the data one after the other. And also, if you know that this data contains same information, what you need to do is to always combine and transform your data. So you always want to combine and transform your data. So make sure the data you have in that folder contains same information, and at the same time, they also you also want to use the combine and transform button instead of clicking on transform your data. Okay, so this is our combine and transform data. So all the data here, they contain the same columns and they contain the same information in the columns. So these are just the states. So if I load more, I'll be able to see all the states that I have in that data set. So all the information from Nigeria to Canada. Look at here, the CSV. So that's why I always say, make sure the information you have in that folder is the same thing before you would want to think about connecting to a folder. And there's also one thing I like about connecting to a folder is that let's say, for example, what we have here is Germany, Canada, Australia. Let's say we added USA. Let's say our company opened a branch in USA and we have to add another USA data here, right? So any other transformation I've done here, would follow suit, and if I refresh, that USA data will automatically come in here. So that is one way people that work with Excel do kind of automation, right? Do kind of refresh in Excel. So they put their data in a folder, connect to it using Power Query, and if the form a pivot table, anytime they refresh, anytime they add anything on that folder, anything I add on this folder would automatically appear in that place. So if let's say I copy this, let me copy this and I paste it here. Then let me rename this and show you guys. So if I rename this to USA, if I refresh my data here, that USA data is going to automatically come in here. So that's one thing also you want to bear in mind when you connect to a CSV file. Anytime you connect to a CSV file, you also want to bear in mind, a folder, you also want to bear in mind that anything I add on that folder will automatically appear here in my data. So look at it here, USA files have been added. Right, so USA. So we have an extra one which is called USA. We also have Australia, we have USA. So that's just the advantage of connecting to a folder, right? That's an advantage of connecting to a folder. So I was trying to talk about how to connect to a Google Sheet file. So my network was really disturbing, but this is just actually how to connect to it's either you use the connector, which I don't like using. I don't like using the connector. Basically, I don't like using the connector. So what I do is that I just edit this aspect of my data. If I connect to it, edit it, then I export it. Export equals to question mark, then I say I want to export it as an Excel file. So this is the extension for an Excel file. So if I click on this, let's try again. Let's see if it works because of network. Go and get more. Then I choose web. Let me just type in web here. Okay, so web. We have a connector for Google Sheets and OneDrive, but this is just my shortest way of doing it, and it should be able to connect to that data source. I don't know why it's an encounter problem while connecting. You should be able to connect to that data source without having those issues. So that is how I connect to my Google Sheet file or my OneDrive file by editing the code. If I did the code, it should be able to take me to where my data resides. In either my OneDrive or let me see where this is coming from. Okay, so let's see where this is coming from. Let's see. Yeah, so this should be able to connect. If network is stable, it should be able to connect. I definitely work with it most times. Plenty times I work with it, and I also work with files in OneDrive because my files always changes, especially when I'm doing customer service analysis, because we scrape data from Twitter and the rest to be able to know how our customers are reacting. So we always have to put it in OneDrive or we put it in our Google Sheet because it's always changing every month. We also want to update it every month. So we add information that we scrape from the website to our Google Sheet, and this is just the aspect we do. All right, so yeah, that is all I have for us on how to connect to different data sources using Power BI. So I would like to take questions and let's see how we go from there.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Wow, wow, that was a lot. That was a lot. And also apologies for the network also. I know it can be funny sometimes. It happens like that. But at least you're able to cover a lot. That's what is mostly important. So if you have any question, you can raise your hand or you can drop it in the chat box. Please, if you have any question, please raise your hand or drop it in the chat box. And also that parameter you did actually saves a lot of issues, especially that manage parameter that you have to change between different sources. Actually, that was like nice featuring us too. So that was beautiful. If you have
Yeah.
any question, if you have any question, please can you just raise your hands or drop it in the chat box. Also, I've already dropped the link to your YouTube channel. I've also dropped the link to your Twitter so people can follow you on Twitter. I've actually followed you on Twitter also. I've also dropped the link to your LinkedIn, so people can also reach out to you on LinkedIn. This session is also recorded, so at the end of the section, you get the recording on our YouTube channel, UrBizEdge. So for some of you that want to connect to Prince on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and also on Twitter, I've dropped this Twitter handle in the chat box. So if there's no question for the meantime, the last two questions I asked you, how you started your own data journey, and also what advice you have for people just starting out in the data field.
Okay, so for starting up career in data, I think it was when I was serving, so I just fell in love with data. I read a few things about it. I fell in love with it, then I started up. And I think I started with Excel, then I moved to Power BI, SQL. I attended Mitiva and other institutions. I think there was a time I was in your section to one dashboard in a day or something. I think it was the organization that I also learned how to use Power BI most effectively. And for people starting up with Power, for people starting up a career in data analytics, what you just need to do is consistency. The truth is consistency. Just keep, and that in his portfolio, I cannot stress it enough. I cannot stress it enough. Please try as much as possible to build portfolio. No, in this tech world, nobody cares what I know. People want to know what have you done. This is what you have done. Okay, since you have done this, you have the knowledge. So if you have not done anything, you definitely not. People will not really trust you. So I've had interview section where I'm the team lead of my team. So I had interview session last month or last week, where I had to interview few persons and they didn't give me tangible things and we did not consider them. We just look out for people that have done something. Use LinkedIn as your portfolio site, post it on LinkedIn, on Twitter, anywhere you can just point out to someone that, this is what I've done. You just please do that. And also try as much as possible. Don't overwhelm yourself. Take it one step at a time. This month I'm learning Excel. Next month I'm learning Power BI. Next 2 months I'm learning SQL. So if you take it all at a time, it's going to be very cumbersome. Just take it one at a time, and you'll be able to break into the industry, and you become really, really awesome. So let me just apologize for the last. I'm really sorry for the network.
No, it's upwards. You covered a lot. At least you didn't leave us. That was at least I know many people learned a lot from how to get data from a folder, how to also combine and transform. And also the JSON you did, and also the managed parameter you did. That if you change data source, which is actually amazing. So I won't lie to you. Actually, it's perfect to me. It's perfect. No, we're in Nigeria, so I understand how the network looks like here. So I want to say thank you. At least the main thing is you actually attended the section. That's what really matters to us. So Prince Chukwuemeka, I'll say thank you. So is there any other question before we round up for today? Any question for round up for today? So if there's no question, I'll say Prince, thank you for honoring our invitation. In future, definitely we're going to also invite you again. I definitely by then the network will be far better than this. And so if there's no question, I'll close the session for today and I'll say wish you all a lovely week ahead. And bye guys. Have fun, guys.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much.